I might be covered in dog hair. I realized.
Is it prehistoric dog hair?
Hi, this is Aaron from Red Fang, and you're listening to Couch Riffs podcast with me and my friend Mike.
Fuck yeah. Hello, folks. It is your pal Mike Squires, and I am here with episode number 281 of the Couch Riffs podcast, featuring my guest Aaron Beam of Red Fang. Red Fang being a band that Aaron said was in sleep mode at the moment. I'm hoping they come back around in the fall when they reconvene and make some more new music. The band just celebrated 20 years of existence. That's, if you've ever been in a band or if you've ever done anything at all, doing it for 20 years is a long-ass time to be doing a singular thing. And so I applaud them, congratulate them, and celebrate their patience and perseverance. I think they're a great band, and they're all four very cool dudes. The only person I haven't had on the podcast, I think, is Brian now. David built my website. I should get a hold of him and ask him about, you know what? I'm not going to work out the details of what I should do right now. We're doing a podcast. Aaron was an awesome, personable, well-spoken guest. I really enjoyed our conversation. Red Fang has released an album called Deep Cuts, which features a bunch of unreleased tracks, demos, covers. Very cool release. Gives you a little bit of a, behind-the-curtain look at the process of how they do things, how songs come to be. I love hearing demo versions of songs and how they differ from the final versions. It's interesting to me as a musician. I don't know if it's interesting to non-musicians or not. Some, I suppose it is. You should check it out. It's a very cool album, just like all of their fucking albums. Support live music. Go do it. Buy bands t-shirts. Support all art. Love each other. Be nice to each other. The golden rule. You know the deal. Treat people the way you want to be treated. Don't be a dick. And that's it. The world will be a better place. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Thank you very much for listening. If you are enjoying the Couch Riffs podcast, please support us on Patreon. Patreon.com/couchriffs. Aaron, welcome to the Couch Riffs podcast.
Thank you very much.
I feel like this has been a long time coming, but I don't know if I ever actually hit you up about doing this.
Yeah, I just appeared on this couch all of a sudden, and there's no communication whatsoever.
I rubbed my magic lamp, and you were summoned.
Yeah.
Let's see. Red Fang came on my radar in 2008.
Okay.
Does that sound...
Yeah, that would make sense, just given the general timeline of things. And you were friends with John first. I feel like he's the one who introduced us.
I was a fan of Party Time.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. And so I saw Party Time a few times.
Yeah.
And I remember you guys played the Sunset Tavern.
Yes.
In Ballard.
Yep. I was wearing silver shoes at that show. Silver Adidas with red stripes. I remember that.
This thing is like a steel trap.
Yeah.
What happened to those shoes?
Probably just completely soaked with athlete's foot fungus. Yeah.
Sweet.
Most likely.
Tour.
Exactly.
Then I ran into you guys. I want to say it was Hellfest.
That sounds right. I don't think it was probably the second Hellfest. The first one we did was 2011.
That would have been 2011.
It would have been that one. Okay.
You guys had nothing in your dressing room, and I was like, well, we can't have that.
That sounds also correct.
And I gave you guys all of our beer and towels. I was just like, how on earth is this going to happen?
Well, I appreciate that, but I was completely out of my mind. We'd driven overnight from Bruges, I think.
Right.
And I drove most of the overnight drive, despite having, a local German tour manager and people who were not super jet lagged and hadn't been playing shows every single night. But yeah, I ended up doing a bunch of the drive, almost ran out of gas. And we pulled in at like 10 in the morning. Figured Sunday at noon, I think we're the second band on that stage in the tent, and we're just like, oh, there's going to be nobody here. And then blown away by the response.
The European festival scene is amazing.
Yeah.
As a kind of a lifesaver.
Oh, for sure. I mean, but it was also, for us, that was like turning point for the whole band, I feel like, as far as what we realized was happening, because that tour, we were the second of 4 bands, but I think third or fourth show, maybe fourth or fifth shows, like within the first few days, we flew to Athens, Greece, and there was people, I mean, the show just was completely bonkers. And there's people singing along with Prehistoric Dog. We're second of 4. We just thought, whatever, we'll go and dip a toe. But to get that kind of a response, it was, early days of YouTube. I don't think Facebook even existed at that point. So it was like MySpace.
Right.
Before even MySpace Music. But yeah, it was...
The video was a strong component on the blowing up of your band.
Absolutely. But also to your point, after we'd already sort of gotten more established, U.S. tours are what they are, but then those European tours are just every single time it's a breath of fresh air.
For people who don't have the experience and don't have the perspective, can you talk a little bit about the difference between touring and playing U.S. clubs and playing and touring in Europe?
Yes.
And the UK?
Well, and especially, I think it's an even bigger difference for us than a lot of bands, because we were in this sort of magic window of we were small enough that we couldn't afford a tour bus in the US. So we were just driving ourselves in a van. And every time you pull into a club, and you usually have to argue for getting some waters or some beers. I mean, you're talking about Hellfest not, providing for us, but every Hellfest after that, they were super good to us.
Right.
So I don't hold that first one against them. But the U.S. is just
and it
normal.
Might have eventually shown up too.
Right. Sure. But in the U.S., it's just normal for there to be almost nothing provided unless you fight for it, or if you're a much, much bigger band. Whereas in Europe, it's just part of, I guess, their culture of hospitality, that there's always snacks and drinks when you arrive at the venue. They pretty much always provide dinner. For smaller bands, there's also almost always some sort of lodging provided by the venue.
Yeah.
Either at the club, or they subsidize some local hotel or have a deal or something. That magic window thing that I was talking about is for us over in Europe. We realized after doing a little bit of boring spreadsheet calculations that we could afford this vehicle over there that has bunks, but it's not quite a tour bus. And so we actually saved money and could sleep anytime we wanted. But yeah, and I think it's, from what I understand, a lot of the venues in Europe are actually subsidized by local governments. And so they actually have a budget to provide hospitality and to pay a band. So you get paid well, and you get just far, far better hospitality than you ever can in the US, unless you want to. We've done tours with bigger bands that they just bring a catering company with them.
Right.
And it's the headlining band pays for it the whole way through. And it's just a different world.
Is it when you're in like France or Belgium is always one that takes good care.
Oh, yeah.
You show up and the club has like a full catering kitchen in it. And there's someone on staff who cooks a sick ass meal. And you sit down and you eat with the entire staff of the club.
Right. Yeah.
Like everyone is like, dinner is at 5 or 6 or whatever it is. We all eat together.
Right.
And it's really amazing to like establish those kind of relationships and then go back and have this sort of familial experience every time.
You're all in it together. And that's actually another good point with that I didn't really necessarily key in on when we're, because you often get asked what, how do they compare? But the fact that on a US tour, like especially as the opening band, you're just scrambling to even figure out when you can get food in between. You're just waiting and waiting and waiting, and then suddenly you have to, throw your stuff on stage because doors are in like 20 minutes, and then now you're like in this, panic mode, and now you're all, like you go past doors, and now it's 45 minutes before you have to play. There's no way you're going to be able to go get food,
right?
Whereas the European clubs understand we have to set aside a time. No matter what, everyone just stops what they're doing and we're going to come up. But you can't do a sound check because the staff is all eating dinner. So
it almost doesn't matter how cool the bands are that you're touring with. Like if as an opener, there's a general sense of you're just lucky to be there.
Over here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not necessarily with the band, but with the production.
Right.
It's pretty strange.
Yeah. I get a feel like I started getting this feeling. It happens to be fair sometimes on some of the European festivals also, that you start to just feel like you feel like a cow, that you're just being put out there for they're like getting the stall ready or whatever, and then they just put you out there to show you for a little while and then see if you can collect a ribbon, and then they pull you back off and then hose you down.
Yeah. It's pretty sweet when you get a ribbon, though, even if it's like an honorable mention.
Yeah. I'm still waiting for that day, but...
Do you remember the first time you played to a festival crowd? Well, let's start here.
Sure.
Let's back way up, and we'll talk about the new release, too.
All right.
The Odds and Sods album.
Yes.
Where are you from?
Born in Seattle.
Oh.
But my dad is a professor, and my mom actually became a professor as well. So we moved when I was like 8 months old to New Haven, Connecticut, and then Iowa City, Iowa when I was about 5.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to, when I was about almost 13, we moved to Colorado. And then when I was 17, I moved to Portland. So I moved to Portland in 91.
All over.
Yeah.
But you finished high school in Portland? You did high school in Colorado?
I was, my birthday's at a weird time, so I started school when I was 4.
Oh.
Kindergarten. So yeah, I turned 18 right after I moved to Portland and started college.
Got it.
Yeah.
Where'd you go? PSU?
Reed College.
Reed?
Yeah.
Did you ever nude?
I did take, I think, 3 showers in the 4 years I was there. So yeah. Yeah.
Isn't that a thing there?
Oh yeah.
It's a little
lots of friends who did that or painted themselves blue.
Right.
So they're sort of nude, but not really.
Right.
But yeah.
For folks who don't know, will you explain Reed College?
Well, it's a very classical education, to the point where there's always students complaining about the fact that they don't have, certain programs, environmental studies or whatever. But for as rigorous as the educational side of it is, it's like basically work hard, party hard. So people will, pull all-nighters regularly studying, and then on the weekends they just go completely bonkers. And then that all culminates in an end of the year party when so every senior has to write a senior thesis in order to graduate from school. So you spend all year long working on this paper, research project, whatever it is. And then the day that they turn it in, which is about a week before classes end, there's a campus-wide party, and they've had, they have a pretty big budget for the party, and they get huge bands to come and all sorts of crazy.
What bands played while you were there?
I don't really remember very much about what was. I mean, usually the bands would actually happen during the year, not as much during. It's called Ren Fair. It used to be a Renaissance fair, but it isn't at all anymore. But I mean, Ween came when I was at I think a freshman. Carp played.
I just heard one of the dudes from Ween lives in Seattle.
Oh, no kidding?
Yeah.
Huh.
Ween played.
Yeah.
Carp played.
Yeah. the Alcoholics. Do you remember they were a
Rap group?
Yeah. They were one of the best things I've ever seen. A, live, period, and B, by far the best live rap anything that I've ever seen, because it usually just doesn't come across very well. I mean, regulars were like Hitting Birth and King Black Acid, that kind of thing.
Local bands.
Yeah. Unwound played. Stereo Lab came and played.
Oh, that's cool.
What was something with there was like a 2-person something like electronic thing, mouse something, not Dead Mouse.
Danger Mouse?
Danger Mouse. No, not Danger Mouse. It was way before that.
Oh,
but
I don't know.
Whatever. There's lots. It was like ran the gamut. All kinds of cool stuff. Seeing Stereo Lab there was pretty awesome, though.
I bet.
Yeah.
Were you playing music in Colorado?
Yeah, I started when I was 15. A friend of mine got a guitar.
Yeah.
And got interested in, I got interested in that as well through him. And we're still in touch, actually. Because he ended up going to Reed as well. And then I think the first thing that I did in front of anybody was for like the talent show. We did Big Bottoms.
Wow.
The Spinal Tap. Yep. And we did.
Wait a minute. Were you in high school? You were in high school.
15, yeah. Junior year. I was like 15, I think.
Any eyebrows raised?
A little bit. Well, the thing that I remember was, because I already at that point had like long hair. I wore, just for the purposes of the thing, I wore like spandex, and did the fake
Like the
splits
thing.
and pretended to get hurt. Blah 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 blah. And I remember hearing afterwards, like people asking which school I went to. They didn't even know that I was a student at that school. I was very quiet, and shy during high school. But then as soon as I got on stage, I was like, I don't care,
Right.
So yeah, that was the first like actual rock performance I ever did. I was in jazz band and band or whatever. And then that basically those same people, we also had kind of like a grunge band that we started playing shows, I think my senior year or something. So
what were the bands that you were listening to in high school that you kind of felt like were your North Star?
True
yeah. North.
Well, what got us into really playing music and writing our own songs was mostly Soundgarden and Mudhoney and Nirvana.
Rad.
And so I was lucky enough to see Nirvana right before I moved out to Portland. It was the summer of 91. I guess it was before Nevermind came out, but they played a couple songs from Nevermind.
What was that tour?
It was it was a short little tour. They were, but here's the thing is that the local dude in Fort Collins who turned me on to all the music that was like worth anything. He played in a band called Great Caesar's Ghost with Brett Bradford, is that his name? The guitar player from Scratch Acid.
Rad.
He'd moved up to Fort Collins. They played in a band together. And they were supposed to play with Jesus Lizard in Fort Collins. And I was excited about that. But then, I can't go to that because Nirvana is coming through opening for Dinosaur Jr. And then I found out that Jesus Lizard found out about that show, and they were like, hey, can we come down and play?
Right.
Can we join that show? So so it was Jesus Lizard, Nirvana, and Dinosaur Jr. And that also happened to be the very first show that my brother ever went to, which is a pretty good start.
That's off to a running start right there. Where was that in Fort Collins?
No, that was in Denver.
Oh, it was
so
in
we
Denver.
traveled down. Yeah, it was at the Gothic Theater.
Got it.
Yeah.
Is that place still there?
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just saw, I can't remember who it was, but some friends of ours just played there. Maybe it was High on Fire or something.
Right.
But yeah, we played there a couple times.
Nice.
Maybe not quite as packed out as Dinosaur Jr. and
Nirvana.
Yeah, Nirvana, but it was good.
You guys played gigs?
Yeah, I mean, there was this weird club in the basement of like one of the student centers at Colorado State University called they called it DC Bottoms.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was like a Grange Hall, and there was just this like loft, somebody's apartment, like just
Right.
outside of the kind of downtown area. So yeah, we played quite a few
But
shows.
that's where you were, Fort Collins.
Fort Collins is where I grew up, yeah. But my folks have since moved to Denver, and also we went to a bunch of shows in Denver. I had friends there, so
Sure.
there's a lot of back and forth. But I went to school in Fort Collins.
Did you guys ever play the Lion's Lair?
No. There was a place so I think that place used to be called, it was maybe even called the Crocodile or something like, or Gators. It was called Gators, I think, before it became the Lion's Lair.
The stage was like back behind the bar.
I don't even remember there being a bar, but I was underage, so
Right.
I probably wouldn't have noticed.
Oh, then that's definitely
Maybe different
not
place.
Lion's Lair.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it used to be gnarly. I walked by there when we played there recently, and it's looked in the window, and looks like the layout has changed a lot. But
Okay.
so by the time, were you playing in bands when you got to Portland?
Well, this guy that I played, his name's Chad, the guy that I played in bands with in high school.
Mhm.
He's the one who first got the guitar that got me interested. My first guitar was his old guitar. He also went to Reed College, and so we basically started up a band almost immediately after we got to Portland. So
Another grunge band.
yeah, a little bit more. By this time, I discovered like Mr. Bungle and Primus. So
You were slapping.
I was slapping. I was very slappity poppity. I played guitar before though. I started playing bass when I moved to Portland because
Oh, got it.
we didn't know any bass players. So I was like, all right, I'll do it.
That's how I ended up playing bass too.
Oh yeah.
I also discovered Mr. Bungle, and it was pretty game changing for me.
Yeah.
And this kind of answers one of the questions that I had, because I was going to ask you, Red Fang music lands a little bit left of center, even if it's not, without being quirky.
Right.
Like a lot of left of center music could be classified as quirky.
Yeah.
Those two bands.
Yeah. You got the circus element to it.
Yeah. There's a little bit of sideshow kind of vibes, right?
Yeah.
But what are the characteristics of left of, like, odd meters?
Yeah.
Odd meters is like a quick one.
Yeah.
And so, are there any other bands that sort of got, I guess Soundgarden did some odd meters, but not changing. They weren't like, okay, a bar of 4, the turnaround is a bar of 5,
right.
But then the chorus is 6s.
Yeah.
It's.
I would say that probably, pre-Red Fang, I think all 4 of us were playing music that you could really easily classify as math rock. And I guess that came from probably a lot of it was just other math rock bands. So like Don Cab.
Right.
And Breadwinner, Mr. Bungle to an extent. No Means No was a huge influence on me. And even
what a fucking bass tone, too.
Oh my God, yeah. Totally, that's where I stole my tone from, was just trying to emulate his.
So good.
Yeah. I didn't even get there, but it's in the same, in the ballpark.
Sure.
Excuse me. But yeah, and so even Jesus Lizard had, like, not changing it up a ton, not mathy, but they definitely played around with it. But Led Zeppelin all over the place.
Sure.
So, but we really, I think all 4 of us ended up keying into that kind of thing and started picking it out and spotting it where you didn't even necessarily know it was there. Joan Jett, I Love Rock and Roll.
Sure.
The All You Need Is Love, that Beatles song, like, didn't even realize that it drops a beat until years later. It was actually after my son was born. He became a little bit into
where did they drop a beat?
If you listen to the song, you can't. That's the thing, is that when you sing it to yourself, you don't realize that it drops one, but it does.
Right. It's not like Rush, where it's like, it sounds like you're playing in 7, but when Radiohead does it, it's like, it sounds fluid, right?
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I think that John Sherman in particular is very careful about when he's trying to navigate all these weird time signatures that Brian and I gravitate towards, is not making it sound like it's an odd time and not sound herky-jerky. And I think that
he's a monster drummer.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah, I think herky-jerky is kind of that thing that, that the Primus is, and that the Mr. Bungle does it on purpose.
They wallow in it.
Yeah.
They're just like, yeah.
Yeah. Or John Zorn is another.
Sure.
Got really into that stuff too.
Same.
Yeah.
All the Naked City. And
exactly.
Fucking, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so did you ever go through a Zappa phase?
I didn't.
Never.
No.
Wow.
No.
Too weird, too funny.
I think I heard it. It was too late already by the time I really started hearing it. So same thing with like Beefheart. It was just too late. Right. I was not in that, like, I had already moved into the like, oh, now I'm going to listen to Sabbath. Like I started listening to Sabbath late. And like Weezer and stuff like that. I kind of like went from super weird to super not weird, right. And I kind of had just sort of moved to a point where I wanted it to just be more like cheese pizza. I didn't want to have all the weird stuff on the pizza anymore.
Sure.
Broccoli and cheddar. I used to like it.
Who put broccoli on? Yeah, right, in 1994.
Yeah, 93 I think is when I was putting broccoli on there.
Right.
Yeah, on a Boboli.
So what did you major in?
Biology. My dad is a biophysicist, and so I started working in his lab when I was 15. So I guess around the same time that I started playing guitar.
Right.
And so it just seemed like I was always interested in science, and I always loved music and was kind of interested in science. And since my folks were paying for me to go to a pretty expensive, fancy education, I listened to their advice. I think wisely, wise advice and wise listening. If I, and they said, we understand that you like music, but why don't you think about majoring
not being a loser.
Right. Basically, yeah. Think about majoring in something where you might be able to actually have a job where you can make some money.
Right.
And then, of course, the joke is, or the irony of it all is that I made far, far more money playing music than I ever did working as a lab tech. And that's not to say I made a lot of money playing music, but I did not make very much money at all as a lab tech. So.
Right. So you did work in the field.
Yeah.
After school.
Yeah. So I basically worked all the way through. Every summer I worked in my dad's lab. And then I had a job up at OHSU, the Oregon Health Sciences University, for a year or so, left for a while, and then ended up getting another job at the VA hospital working in a immunology lab studying a mouse model of MS.
Oh, wow.
And then after that, I was just like, all right, I'm not going to do this for the rest of my life. I'm not going to get a PhD. So I just kind of left it behind and started doing odd jobs. And
do you see any crossover in between your science experience and your approach to music?
There might be some. I never really thought about that. I mean, there's definitely a lot of stuff that I applied from that science training and just the way of thinking about problems, just sort of more about like logistics and even, inventory tracking and stuff like that, because we did all of that ourselves for merch for most of the time. That
were you the tour manager? Not
really manager. I mean, more just like kind of keeping track of merch stuff. I would say that John tended towards tour manager before we had someone with us.
Right.
But now that you mention it, there's probably some part of just the kind of methodical approach that science takes to pretty meticulously and slowly breaking down what it is about something that makes it work or not work. And that I think I do apply some amount of that to songwriting in a way that I think drives most people crazy because I'm super patient, and I will also, I don't necessarily know immediately what's right. And so I have to go through like tons of iterations and try and basically experiment with, what if we put that part third instead of, 17th or whatever? What if we make this phrase go backwards or whatever it is, like that kind of stuff? I don't know how to do that in my head, so I have to do it by hearing it.
You touch on an interesting aspect of being in a band, and that's the dynamic of whatever 3 to 5, if you're a ska band, 12 members worth of patience.
Yes.
And everyone has a different amount of patience for fleshing out ideas, and whatever that idea is, whether it's a part of a song, an album cover, a t-shirt design, a fucking record deal, where to stop to take a leak, where the best burger in Arizona is, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Red Fang is, what's the status of Red Fang?
I would say that we're in sleep mode right now.
You're in sleep mode.
Yeah. We can be awoken. We haven't powered down.
17 or 18 years, is that? Am I counting right?
Well, the first show we played was New Year's Eve of 2025 into 26. So we started playing we started practicing in September 2025.
It's not 26 yet.
Is it?
I said it's not 2026 yet.
No. But
2015 into 2016.
No.
Is that right?
No. 5 into 6.
5 into 6.
Yeah. Did I say
2005 into 2006? Maybe I heard you wrong.
I probably said it wrong, and you heard me wrong. I think everything was wrong.
So 2005.
But yeah, so basically, so it's like 20 years basically.
Right.
Not 20 years since our first record, I think, came out we put it on an EP in 2025 at some point. Or I mean, in 2005. I did say 2025, didn't I? Yes, I think we put out our first produced ourselves thing. I think we did a tour in May of 05. That was the first short little thing that we did with just this little burned CD from CD Baby. Right. Bullseye Disc actually is where we did it. Anyway,
I worked there at CD Baby.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
actually, I did. I knew that. I remember we talked about that. So yeah, 20 years actually.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's very wild considering. Well, how in the hell did 20 years pass at all?
Right.
And we're still alive. But also maybe 2 years is the longest any other band I ever had lasted. Maybe 3. So
what bands had you had played in? Portland bands that had toured, or just local bands?
No, I had done one tour down the West Coast with a kind of a ska band when I was 30. That was the first tour I ever did. And then
you were in a ska band. You guys have horns and everything?
I played saxophone.
Wow.
Yeah.
The plot thickens.
It does. Or maybe everybody just turned off the podcast. A friend of mine, he was just very much a revolutionary mind. Mm-hmm. And I guess he just kind of felt like that was the best expression of the message that he wanted to send out. We had color coded. We had to wear black, orange, and green because it was the opposite on the color wheel from red, white, and blue. And I mean, it went pretty deep.
Yeah.
But it was fun. I mean, it was I was just tooting a horn a little bit,
Right.
And that first tour was actually, first and only tour was also fun because he was Doug March's brother-in-law. So we were opening for Built to Spill. So it was super easy and cush. We just toured in a couple sedans. And our keyboard player was not able to do the tour because he also played keyboards for Steve Malkmus and the Jicks. Mm-hmm. So I learned his keyboard parts, and there was a few points where I was playing saxophone and keyboard at the same time. So,
when was the last time you played sax?
It was during lockdown. Things got a little bit gnarly, and so we had some jam sessions in our basement, and I played a little bit of Jerry Rafferty, but then my saxophone broke, and so I actually gave it to. It started kind of falling apart. It was very old, not I'd had it since high school. So I actually donated it to my son's high school, which is an arts high school, and they need instruments. So
nice.
Yeah.
I should know the answer to this question. Did you commit any saxophone to a Red Fang song ever? No. You're like inappropriate.
I don't think it is inappropriate, really. I think that, I mean, I appreciate, I didn't like it at all at the time, but that, the like trombone parts on the Melvins, are awesome. Like there's plenty of spots where it works great. But yeah, maybe I just didn't have I wasn't brave enough to try to do that. I could have been okay.
You brought the Melvins up and you toured with the Melvins.
We played one show. Didn't tour with them. I've been on.
Did I not see you with the Melvins in Brooklyn?
It's possible, but I was riding along with my wife's band who was opening for the Melvins. So Helmsley has done a couple tours with them. So, but yeah, Red Fang has played, I think, one show with the Melvins, and it was also New Year's. It was New Year's of 2006.
Maybe I just saw you at the same venue. Different shows.
Yeah.
I'm mixing, that was a period.
It's weird that somehow you would confuse some shows over the course of 30 years or whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The first time I saw them, they were opening for Mr. Bungle. It was like 1991 or 2.
Yeah.
1, I think.
Okay.
And
I wonder if that... Go ahead.
It was crazy. Like, it was a crazy thing. And looking back on it, I have to wonder if it was planned. But, everyone was there to, like, pogo and go fucking crazy.
Yeah.
And here comes the Melvins.
Right.
And
slow motion pogo.
It was the slowest, dirgiest thing I'd ever heard. And I was like, what is happening?
Yeah.
Like, this is so weird. And in maybe the first, maybe the second song, like one of the amps like blew up. And then they just spent 20 minutes looking at the amplifiers and then just played a song. And then that was the set. And I have to at least wonder if that was planned. Or to agitate people.
Right.
As for fun.
Yeah. Actually, my wife has become pretty good friends with Buzz since they did those tours. So
I would love
I'll see if she'd be down to text him and ask him.
Because it could also have just been a miserable...
That they were freaking out like, God damn it, why now?
Right.
Yeah.
People were really not... people were not into it. And then
they weren't into a 20-minute break.
It was... but I was like, this is amazing. I was,
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was amazing.
I wonder if it was the similar or the same tour, but I saw Mr. Bungle it must have been spring of 92. It was during my spring break. But Caius was opening for him.
Oh.
And I didn't know Caius at the time. It was a weird bill. And at the time, I was super into really weird music and very much not into macho, anything that I considered macho at all.
Right.
And so I was just like, oh my God, I hate this band. And, that was 92. That was a long time ago.
Sure.
Similarly, like the first time that I loved Neurosis Souls at Zero. And then I saw them play and they were like big, beefy, scary looking dudes. And I was like, damn it. Because in my mind, I thought they were like all these skinny guys with glasses.
Right.
And I just was so anti-macho that it kind of turned me off from Neurosis for a while.
Right.
But there was something else that you made me think of about the that Mr. Bungle Melvins thing, but it'll come back, but I forgot what it was.
If you could get to the bottom of that, I would be, because for sure they remember.
Right.
For sure they remember.
Yeah, I will. Oh, I remember the other, it was not quite the same, but speaking of Patience and European festivals, the first time that we played Roskilde.
Mm-hmm.
I think we were on right before Baroness, and we were, it was like the second to last or third to last. I can't remember how much. We had maybe like 15 minutes left in our set, and we played this slow song, and the very end of the song is just me and John kind of like slowly finishing it off with this little run or whatever.
Slapping.
Yeah, exactly. Very tons of slapping, like really slow slapping. And right as I go to hit the very last note, this gentle last note, I'm like, no sound comes out. And I have I'm not the most dexterous bass player. So I usually play with a pick, partly because, I'll just miss with my fingers. And I was like, God damn it. Why did I have to miss the string in this particular, like, last note of this thing where it's just like so obvious that I missed it? And then I realized that no sound was coming out of anywhere. And it was because all of the power had gone out in the whole tent at exactly the moment that we went to hit that note. It turned out that it was rats had chewed through the main power cables that went to power everything, lights, PA, everything. So we couldn't even make an announcement of what was happening. And the stage crew was like, you guys we just stood there for a long time. And then eventually they were like, just leave and we'll sort it out. And then let's go check with Baroness. Was very kind. They were like, if they sort it out soon enough, you guys can just finish their set. It took them 20 minutes to fix it. And then we went back out and played like the last
note.
Well, yeah. I wish that would have been great. That would have been way better. That would have been the Melvins thing to do. But no, we actually finished off our set. But it was also like, it was remarkable that almost nobody left. They were all like just waiting in the tent. And Baroness also was like, sure, go ahead and finish your set. And it was like just so much goodwill and generosity and patience. And it was a really tender moment.
I've always wanted to be in a band that was kind of like a concept high art band, but also a rock band. Not necessarily like the Melvins, but where you could do something ridiculous like that, or where it like every show was just you didn't have a rule.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I feel like Mike Patton is pretty good at enforcing that in any of the projects that he does. He's just basically like, I'm going to do whatever I want.
Right.
And you guys are going to like it or not, and I don't care.
I've seen Red Fang on 3 continents. I've seen Red Fang in as many continents as I have in as many states.
Ah, okay, interesting.
How about that?
Yeah. Europe, Australia,
yeah,
US,
yeah,
and then so what you in
Oregon,
New York, and Washington,
and Washington. Yeah. So
you're not really a fan of the US version of Red Fang.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they're okay in the States, right. But with the exchange rate.
Exactly.
With the US dollar as strong as it is right now.
Yeah. That is one of the funny things about being a touring musician playing a lot of European shows. When we first started touring over there, the dollar was really weak.
Right.
And so we were getting like 30% extra for all of our paychecks. And then it started getting stronger and stronger and stronger. I was like, no, please, no. It's you are rooting against the dollar when you spend most of your time touring in Europe.
Politics are funny that way.
Yeah.
We're incentivized by our own benefits.
Right. Yep.
Patton was on the tour that we did in Australia.
Yeah.
And can we talk about that tour for a moment?
Yeah.
Because it's one of the highlights of my entire music career.
Oh, it was amazing. It was incredible.
I don't want to go into the one big inside our funny moment that we had there, because I don't want to talk out of school for the public, for the general public.
Fair enough.
We did hang out with Metallica
Yeah.
and everyone that was on the tour, which was an impressive tour. It
Yeah.
was essentially the big four minus Megadeth.
Yes, no Megadeth.
Plus Tomahawk, Stone Sour Ghost, Red Fang, fucking.
It was, I can't remember. I think there were 55 bands on that tour.
Right.
So there's no way that you or I could ever remember even a fraction of them.
A lot of metalcore bands.
Yeah.
With the and then there were whatever.
There's a hardcore stage. Sword was on that. Orange Goblin.
Oh, yeah.
Fozzy.
Yep.
Was I think right after us or something. So that was pretty fun.
That's where I met Chris Jericho for the first time.
Yeah.
Later toured with him, and what a funny guy.
Yeah.
He's really hilarious, actually.
That's great.
I think, what was that? Like 10 days? Was it 10 days?
Yeah, it was not that long.
I got 7 massages while we were there. From that.
From a wombat or?
No, there was a massage tent there. Did you never go there?
I think that because we were playing so early, so we were waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for the schedule. It was sort of, I don't know how we ended up on this tour after we got the schedule, because I think there was actually 57 bands.
Ghost was on a side stage.
Yes, they were on a side stage. We're on the smallest side stage, as far from the entrance of whichever place they happen to be at as you could be. But we're just waiting for the schedule. I had no idea where we'd be. It was our first time ever in Australia, and finally got it. And it was like, okay, 11:20. And I was like, oh, geez, that's kind of late. I guess it might be good. We'll probably be playing against somebody big, which is unfortunate.
Like Slayer.
Right, exactly. So it was like, at first I was like, oh, cool, 11:20. And then I was like, oh, no, that's actually probably bad. And then I looked closer, and it was 11:20 a.m., not 11:20 p.m.
Right.
And I didn't know that it was possible for rock bands to play before noon, but it was.
Your biological clock wasn't saying noon, though.
Well, luckily, we just flown over from the U.S., so it was no big deal. But what I was shocked and very pleasantly surprised by is that every single show, I don't know if it's because Australians have some special genes or something, every time we played, except for one, which I can briefly talk about, already completely packed with like super enthusiastic,
yeah, man,
already pretty much wasted fans.
Yeah.
Like they were busting down the door to come in and just be there all day long.
Australians don't mind drinking.
No, they're not allergic to it.
They don't mind it at all.
Yeah. But there was the one day, so my ex-wife, she flew down to join us, and then she spent a few days just in Melbourne on her own, and then we went and did some vacationing afterwards. So Melbourne. I
remember talking to you about this while, like, on that tour.
Yeah. So I learned to scuba dive down there. So the one show that she came to was the Melbourne show, which I figured was going to be maybe the best one. And we're up there, 11:20 arrives, totally empty. There's no one there at all. And so, and my wife had just showed up, and I was like,
she's like, great job, rock star.
Yeah, exactly. You're gone all this time for this. Way to go. But then it turned out there was a problem, just some technical problem with the gates. And it ended up being, we waited just like 2 minutes to start, but people just like sprinting across the field to come. Ended up being way better than it would have been had it already been packed when we started.
Right.
It was super cool. Yeah, that tour was amazing.
That promoter was I encountered him a few times. He was a real nice fella.
I don't think I ever talked to him.
Very generous guy. Do you remember there were all those big dinners and like side shows?
Yeah.
And it was just like very extravagant.
Yeah.
There was a tent that was like a massage tent.
Mm-hmm.
And you go there, like me and my bandmate Jeff sort of stumbled in there, and we're like, hey, what's the deal? And they were like, free massages.
Yeah.
We're like, free? They're like, yeah, the promoter just pays for it.
Right.
And we were like, how do we sign up? And they're like, we're completely open. Nobody knows. So we sign up, like we immediately get like an hour-long massage in this tent.
Yeah.
And you're here listening to like Falling in Reverse or whatever in the background.
Yeah.
It's not the most peaceful, but you're getting a massage, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the massage, tip them. And they're like, we're at every festival site. You can also schedule us for your side shows. And we're like, so, and then, we also all had days off. And they were like, you can schedule us to come to your rooms and massage you at your rooms.
They're just twiddling their thumbs, basically.
Right, but also I think they were billable hours. So they were like, hey,
I see.
Nobody knows we're here. We can, we're
That's
just
amazing.
Here.
Yeah.
So, we were there for 10 days.
7
Jeff
massages.
And I each got 7 massages.
I love it. Yeah, we had to, I guess that was to finish where I was going with the 11:20 start time. We were usually like already on our way to the airport by like 1:30 because they did everything for you with all the gear. All you did was you show up, pull your bass out, play the show, and then they're like, all right, let's go. So it only like once or twice did I even get to see any of the bands on the festival because we were leaving immediately after we played.
That's a bummer.
Yeah. But aside from that, there was still, the days that we did get to go and then also going to the Metallica barbecue was great. And it was swimming in the in Perth, swimming in the, I guess, Indian Ocean or whatever it is.
Did you go and see Bon Scott's? No, I didn't do any of the Bon Scott tourism.
No. Did you have the same experience that we did, though? So we were doing sideshows with Caius and Orange Goblin.
Mm-hmm.
Caius lives. And I think we all stayed at the same hotel in Perth. Maybe not. But why am I blanking on the drummer from Caius? You know who I'm talking about. 1973.
Yeah.
Brant Bjork.
Yeah, thank you.
He is like the coolest guy you could meet as far as just like you cannot ruffle his feathers no matter what. He's always just totally calm and collected and just chill as fuck. Can I say fuck?
You can. This is a grown-up show.
I'm sorry that I waited so long to do it. But he came to get into the bus to go to that steak dinner or whatever that night that you're talking about that we all went out, that the promoter took everyone out, all like 600 people.
It was and also insane.
And don't forget also the chartered flight that he paid for, that he had just a private plane for, for 20 or 30 of the bands or whatever. So he's like, comes to the bus and is just like vibrating. I've never seen him like this before or since. And it was because he had just ridden the elevator down with the bass player from Crazy Horse, because Neil Young and Crazy Horse were staying at the same hotel as us, and they played a concert the night that everyone arrived in Perth, and no one from the entire tour knew about it. That we easily could have gotten into the show and gone and seen him in Australia, but of like, there's probably 300 at least people in that tour. Probably more. And that not one single person figured out that, the night that we all have off in Perth, Neil Young is playing.
I've never seen Neil Young live, and it's one of the things that I feel like is incomplete about my life.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen him once, but it was on this weird, like, concept album tour. So he barely played any of the hits. He played the whole album.
Right.
But also the other part about that, sharing that same hotel with them, John Sherman rode the elevator down with Neil Young. He got in and he was like, oh, and then just, immediately just turned around and just faced forward and didn't say anything.
Right. Growing up a music fan.
Yeah.
And it's hard to completely separate yourself from your fandom, right?
I would hope so.
You maintain your composure.
Yeah.
But when we meet, like when we met James Hetfield, you had maybe met him.
We met him once before. And so, yeah.
At the Orion Festival.
Yeah.
But when he walked up, you actually said, "Hello, James Hetfield." And I was like, oh. But it was cool, but
Yeah.
also, but it's mostly surreal, right?
Yeah.
You're like, oh,
I wonder if that was me though, because
it was absolutely you.
are you sure it wasn't Brian?
Absolutely.
Because
you.
I remember I walked over to him because he was already talking to John and Brian. It's possible that it was me, but that sounds like a Brianism. That's totally the type of thing. But it also sounds like something that I would say.
I'm 95% sure it was you.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll accept it.
Yeah. I do remember one of you asked the bus thing. You were like,
that was me.
We're, yeah, I thought so.
Yeah.
We're not big. And like, you asked a question about a bus, and I was like, don't ask about buses. Because they had a fucking awful bus accident.
It was not about buses, about pre-buses.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think the question was like, at what point were you able to transition as a band? Because we're in this limbo.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God. I was like, oh, I was shrinking. I was like, because I don't know what kind of dude he is.
Right.
I don't know if he's like what kind of PTSD he's got.
Sure.
I was just like, oh man.
Yeah.
Ask him about his true bypass overdrive. Like whatever. Just like
yeah.
The
new custom pickups or whatever that he's got in his guitar.
That's right.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was a huge one for me. Still to this day, like, I'm friendly with Steve Jones, and that's still for whatever reason, Steve Jones is still the person that, like, I've hung out with him and gone hiking, but my heart rate elevates, not racing, but I'm like,
it's above baseline.
That's right.
Yeah.
Touring, you're around a lot of folks that you admire a lot. Everyone, you hanging out with people at catering, at festivals, and touring, whatever. Have you been around anyone that's made you really nervous?
Well, you already alluded to it in the way that I acted even the second time that I met James Hetfield. He was the most like, oh geez, when we played Orion Music and More.
Yeah.
The whole way out to that festival, we were like, there is no way that Metallica has any idea who we are. It was clearly just their people were like, oh, this band is, they have a video that's cute, so we'll just throw them on. And so I was saying the whole drive, I'm like, the only way that I'm going to believe that they had anything to do with picking us is if James Hetfield comes over and introduces himself. And then 5 minutes before we're supposed to go on, our tour manager comes around and he's like all shook and everybody gather, 3 minutes before you guys go on, you have to gather behind right behind stage because James is going to come over and say hi. And then we all just like, Brian and I both talked about it later, that Brian like punched him in the shoulder. He was like, I don't even remember doing it. He was like, I totally blacked out. Just like meeting him, I blacked out.
Right.
And I was similar, just I don't remember much except that he had purple sandals and like all purple basketball gear on.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. He was very, very relaxed looking. And then
super cool.
Yeah.
When we talked to him in Australia, like the coolest, really.
Yeah. And he fielded my question with aplomb.
Yeah.
He basically, he talked about the early days of touring in a box truck and
a flashlight and a bottle of booze.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. But that's probably, I was pretty darn excited the first time that we played with Midian because I love Yob so much.
Mm-hmm.
That's just so much smaller of a scale, but it doesn't really necessarily matter. It's just like, who do you like feel like is in this sort of like realm that you can't necessarily understand or touch musically, and that inspires you in a way, that makes them seem like more than just a person. But as you know, from years and years of doing it, that you just understand pretty quickly, most people are just people.
Right.
But there is that weird thing where there are some people that you still, like you said, your heart rate, despite yourself, it still goes up, even though you can tell yourself that's just a guy,
Right.
Who's got the same guy problems I do, if not worse.
Probably.
Yeah. But there's some of them, yeah. And I know that if I met Jimmy Page, same thing would happen. I would freak out a little bit.
Right.
But it was like, yeah, Metallica and Led Zeppelin were probably the two like most impactful, like biggest long-term impact on me as a person and guiding which direction I went musically. So
Favorite Metallica record?
I mean, Ride the Lightning has been my favorite for a very long time. I spent time trying to figure out every single song on guitar from that record.
Yeah.
So I like a bunch of stuff about Kill 'Em All and Master Puppets and Justice, but that's the one that I was just like, it's right in that exact right spot of still being poppy and aggressive without getting too complicated and weird. I just really love that one. And that was the one that they played the night that we did the Orion Festival. That was the one that they did start to finish.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that band changed the way I looked at music for sure.
Yeah. And that was my bridge into Soundgarden. And I met the first band that I ever met, like, big band or whatever. It was Corrosion of Conformity and Soundgarden and Danzig were on tour. And
Rad.
Yeah. And again, this is back to when I could not stand anything macho at all. So Danzig was on. I was like, yeah, let's get out of here. So we went to the Taco Bell down the street, and then Reed Mullen from Corrosion comes in, and we're like, wait, did you just, and we got to chatting. And actually I was friends with him and played on a record of his like just
Rad.
A few years ago, RIP. But anyway, he was just like, yeah, you can, if you just hang around, you can just meet everybody. Like the Soundgarden guys are super chill. And so we just kind of hung around a little bit, and I ended up meeting Matt and Ben. But Kim and Chris, I guess, were hanging out inside playing basketball because it was at the sports, like whatever, like a center or something, sports center.
What a fucking band.
Yeah. And I just finally met Kim for the first time. Ben I've met a bunch of times just from, being friends of friends or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, those guys, I would have thought that maybe meeting Kim, or if I'd met Chris Cornell, that would have maybe had the same effect. But I guess that maybe just enough time passed. And also sometimes it's the circumstance, right?
Of course.
So it was like at a show where a mutual friend of ours was like, oh, have you met, and introduced us. So it just seemed a lot chiller.
Meeting people at shows is the most convenient and also my least favorite way to meet people.
And I think I understand why.
It just isn't, it's a weird field to be on.
Yeah.
Like, right?
Well, yeah,
if
because
it's your show, you're a little distracted.
Yes.
If it's their show, you're like, I don't want to impose here. Right. I definitely want to split. Like if it's before the show, I want to get out of their room.
I want to be out of the room after they're done.
30 minutes before they go on. I don't know what their rituals are. Maybe they're like, no, stick around. We don't sacrifice a goat before we play or whatever people do,
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't like it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that I don't like it. It's not my favorite.
Right.
Yeah.
I get it. I mean, there's something that's nice about when you're in that context, then everybody's like understand. It's easier to, I guess I'm thinking about when you meet somebody that you knew from, your water polo class, but now you're in India or whatever.
Right.
And you're like, I'm sorry, I can't place you. But if you were in a swimming pool, suddenly,
right.
It's
a peer space.
Yeah. And so it's easier to sort of like make those connections. But yeah, it's true that there's some element. I think other thing that I would add to it is that sometimes there's a hierarchical thing that can happen depending on who the people are, that it can feel like, part of it is that thing that you're saying, that like, I don't want to impose on, this is your show. I want to get out of here and defer to you instead of just like being able to hang out and be on the same level.
Right.
Yeah.
20 years of Red Fang.
Yeah.
After a series of 2-year outings.
Right.
Outside of meeting some idol type figures, what are some highlight moments?
So some of the highlights, I think, are the obvious ones are like going to, Indonesia to play and playing. And the first time we played in Moscow was just completely an insane, amazing show. There's videotape of that one, luckily, so you can see it.
Where did you play in Indonesia?
We played in Yogyakarta.
I'm going there in December.
Oh, nice. We played a place called Surabaya, and we played like 3 shows or 4 shows or something.
Is it amazing?
The country is great. I would love to vacation there. The shows it was interesting for us because they were like part of this touring thing that was part of a festival, but promoting another festival. And so it was like, there'd be an Indonesian funk band and then a Indonesian pop band and then us. And then it was like never heavy music at all. We were the only band that was even remotely heavy. So
right.
It was pretty interesting and weird. It was fun. But definitely not normal. But the highlights are really like, the biggest highlights were, the first time all 4 of us started playing and just how great it felt immediately to be doing something that was like, we all were focused and knew, even though we come from different places musically and had different ideas, that we just like had the same focus on what the point of doing this band was. Like being in the practice space and writing, coming up with Prehistoric Dog. And I remember Brian it was an old Party Time part that he had that had never turned into a song.
Huh. And
just having this instinct of like, do that thing that you're doing, but when you get to that B, he did it. He would play it for like just vamping on the B chord. He did it like 2 times or 4 times. And it was like, no. Do that. If you feel like, do it like twice as long as you think you should do it. And then double that again. So it feels way too long. And then it ended up being, that's, like the main part of the song is just vamping on a B chord. But when we like, once that song all came together, you could just feel in the room, like as you're writing it, like, oh, this is something different than any of us have done before.
Right.
So it's a lot of that kind of stuff that you can't, it's not like meeting James Hetfield was amazing, but those sort of like moments of like musical connection are really, that's why I play music, not to meet James Hetfield. I play music to do something that feels amazing inside of my body when I'm doing it, That's why I look like this.
You guys never went pop.
Are you sure?
I mean, I wouldn't say so.
I would.
You think you have a pop song?
Sure.
A pop song?
Well, I mean, it depends on what you mean by pop. I mean, I feel like we're as pop as Slayer is. But I'm serious. Like, Slayer has like hooks falling out of the rafters. They're right. Like super, it's, the sounds are aggressive and hurt some people's ears. But when you start picking it apart, it's like tons of hooks in there.
I mean, God Hates Us All is a great hook.
Yeah. I mean, Angel of Death and Raining Blood both are full of hooks.
Yeah. I
guess that maybe for me, pop is different,
right.
than not like, it's not like top 40 for sure. Right. We're not top 40 and we probably just couldn't be.
I mean, as far back as I remember, it is one thing that actually catches my ear in Prehistoric Dog, because seemingly out of nowhere, there is a vocal harmony. And I'm like, on the Kiss Your Ass Goodbye line. And it's not out of place, but it's the only time it happens.
Right.
And it's like, oh, that was a awesome decision.
It's accidents also,
Right.
like I love vocal harmonies. Brian and I can't really sing them together, so I'll just throw them on records occasionally.
Right.
Just harmonize with myself. But I'm not that good at it. I'm good enough to sort of fake it sometimes on a record, but I'm not like, they don't come naturally. I have to like take some minute to try to figure out where to go with it.
Right.
And so that one, it just didn't, I think I tried it other spots. It just didn't work. And that was the one place where it's like, oh, it kind of makes sense right here with these two notes.
It's awesome. And still, as far as convention goes, weird.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. I appreciate that paying attention to that stuff. Like not everybody even notices stuff like that. Like you are aware of it without
how you want it to be.
Right. That's true. In the same way that like John's drumming, you don't even notice that it's in an odd time unless you really like start paying close attention. And that I think is one of the funnest things about doing odd times artfully is discovering maybe even years later that thing that you always thought was in 4 isn't in 4, you know?
So you guys are in rest mode.
Yeah. Sleep mode.
sleep mode.
Yeah.
Was it inspired at all by COVID quarantining and post quarantine touring conditions?
Yeah, I think that had something. I think that COVID changed. I don't know anyone who wasn't affected mentally,
sure,
by that weird moment in all our lives. And there's so that going through that definitely caused a sort of reassessment of everyone's relationship to the world and, within the band, all of our relationships to being on tour and writing music and what are priorities. And, because if you've been touring for 20 or 30 years or whatever, for me, it was shorter, but for a lot of the other guys have been touring since their teens.
Right.
And that was the longest break they'd ever had, maybe, is you can start. I mean, I'm not speaking from like having directly spoken, or I don't know this directly. I'm just assuming that there's a moment where you're like, oh, wait, I haven't spent this much time with my wife in forever or ever, maybe really. And, and then there's other things going on with like people getting sick and people passing away that makes you start reevaluating stuff. So, and I think it was a time that, for me at least, like gives you and my wife went through the same thing with her band. It gives you a minute to step back for a second and look at your relationship to like the music business apart, as separate from being in a band and music creation for, on it for its own merit. And so I started a band with her basically like as soon as lockdown happened, she and I started playing music together because we didn't know if that was going to happen with any of our other bands at all for who knew how long. Yeah. And that band is entirely based on just all we want to do is just have fun writing music together. And if we happen to play shows, fine, but that's not the goal. It's just all about just the fun part of making music with people you like. And
are you guys performing?
Yeah, we've played some shows.
And what's the band called?
It's called Ook Wook, which is...
Spell that for me.
UUK WUUK.
Ook.
Yeah, it's a Tolshot seed word, so it's like
okay.
That's what this sweatshirt has some of that. Hegosawik Lake Chas Teeth Jeff. It's hard to read when it's upside down. But it's a northern Lachute seed word. My wife is a tribal member, so it's her like ancestral language.
Are you learning that?
I am.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's super fun. But yeah, so it's a word from the northern Lachute seed dialect that means to play.
Oh, rad.
Yeah. And nobody says it right. So we went out of our way to try to, because you don't write it. I mean, there was no written language until like 100 years ago. They just started like making up letters for the sounds.
Right.
But the way that you write it in this script doesn't look quite like that. So we tried to write it phonetically, and it totally didn't work at all. That's fine. But so anyway, but yeah, as far as like, yeah, the hibernation thing, I feel like it's, yeah, all of us have some reason to take some time and just to reassess our relationship to that band and to the band as separated from, the band as a unit of 4 friends who make music together in a way that feels fun and productive versus like the business side of the band.
Right.
So
it's interesting how that stuff can come into play and really, it doesn't have to necessarily spoil a good batch of folks.
Yeah.
But it can.
Yeah.
And not not out of any sort of greed or like just like it's taxing.
Yes. That's a good way of putting it.
Right.
Yeah. Because we
literally.
Right. Right. But yeah, we never made enough money for it to be a thing where like getting greedy would mean like, oh, you got, $50 instead of $40 or whatever. There's no like that wouldn't the money wasn't big enough for that to actually be an issue. But it is that thing where
that part
just
of it,
even having to think about like having to make decisions based on, do we want to try to do shared hotel rooms or just everybody get their own hotel room because now we're all almost 50, and is it we're going to come home with $2,000 less in each of our pockets, and is that worth it? Like all that kind of stuff that even if you're not even fighting about it, just having to even talk about it or consider it just gets
fatiguing.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just jump in the van and go and just see what happens.
How interesting, tell me about the difference between having that dynamic, like you've got to make all these decisions. It does impact everyone's livelihood. And then having a band that is literally for fun.
Yeah. I mean, that's what, as far as I'm concerned, that's what all bands should be.
Of course.
But it is so I think about it partially in terms of like thinking about the Mastodon thing with Brent recently. We did a tour with them in 2011, and then another one just like 2 months in November of 2011, and then January, February of 2012. Already by 2012, Brent was like, I am super burnt out. I'm completely over this. I don't want to be doing this. And then 13 years later, this thing happens. And from having been inside of a band that's not even close to the same level of success, but that we make a living playing music, you can't help but think about when I'm like, I don't feel like I can do this tour because my son's birthday or because whatever reason it is. I'm like, I'm really hemming and hawing because me not doing this tour means 3 other people don't get a paycheck. Our manager doesn't get a paycheck. Our booking agent, like maybe the agent will drop us, like all those things. Like you're not making decisions in a vacuum anymore.
It's a marriage of many, many parties.
Yeah, exactly. And so that sort of stuff, that it's great to have those problems. Let's be fair. To get to a point where you're like, you can be selective about which tours and which shows to play and still make a living doing it. Again, we didn't get rich, but I didn't have to do another job for like 10 years. It does just start to wear on you after a while. And I'm sure that I felt like I was the one saying no more than anybody else. And it was hard to do for a long time, but I also feel like that's the only way I could maintain my sanity.
Right.
And I can only guess that it was just as hard for other people to say, like, I'm ready to take a break, because of knowing that same thing, that me deciding to take a break means that everyone has to take a break.
Right.
It feels selfish, even though it's not.
It is and isn't,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
it is about yourself, but if you're going to go completely nuts going on tour
you're not
and
going to
make
be
it
any good to
exactly,
anyone.
I would rather, if you don't want to be on tour, I way rather you just say that and, and we don't do it. Like, I'd much rather let's just be open and honest about it. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm not saying that there was anybody not being open and honest in Red Fang. I'm just saying in general,
Sure.
Yeah.
Generally speaking.
Yeah.
Are you guys are at least in touch about businessy band business?
Yeah. We just did. I drove down to Portland a couple of weeks ago we did a little event for the record release.
Did you guys play?
No, but we did realize that some of the social media posts that were going out maybe were a little misleading and made it look like we were going to play. So we had to like repost something and assure
an appearance.
Yeah, exactly. We'll be there, but we're not playing. No, we're taking basically we set ourselves a 1 year hibernation mode. So starting at the end of the last European tour. So September would be when we, I guess, ostensibly get together and kind of discuss how everybody's feeling. So
do you secretly have a little cache of riffs that you're still working on through this time? Or
I guess mostly I'm using most of them because I've started 2 more projects since September. So I've got a project with a friend from Olympia and a guy from Tacoma, plus playing with my wife. Plus I am playing now with a couple of dudes in Seattle. So
who are you playing with in Seattle?
Ben Varellen from Helmsley, and then
Rad.
Nat Dam from Sandrider.
Right.
And Akimbo. Yeah.
Sandrider guys, what was their band in the 90s and early
Akimbo?
2000s? There was another band that some of those guys were in.
If I say it or you say it, then the other one will be like, oh, yeah.
That's right. I'm not going to remember what the name of the band was. Anyway, Fan.
Yeah. I
want to start a two drummer, 2 bass player band. I think it's a wave of the future.
Yeah?
Yeah. Super easy on the van, 2 drum kits, 2 SVTs. What's the big deal?
Yeah.
I think it's a winner.
Yeah.
Everyone sings 4-part harmonies.
Oh, 4-part harmonies. Very nice.
Yeah.
All like Bach style counterpoint in the harmonies.
Well, probably really linear. Probably pretty like, yeah.
It would be more ELO than...
More ELO than, Queen.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not that clever.
Uh-huh. I saw you. Did you see ELO on that last tour?
You saw them play?
Yeah.
I heard it was unbelievable.
It was great. It's fantastic.
Right.
Yeah. My first and last time, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Everyone's probably, right?
Right.
That was a farewell tour?
It was a farewell tour, yeah.
No, I fucked up.
Yeah.
It sounds like life is pretty good for you right now.
Yeah.
What's your day-to-day look like?
Well, we moved to a house right around the corner from the house where my wife grew up, down in Tacoma, and we're like right next to the state park. But the previous owners, they had built the house in 71 or something. I guess the year you were built.
Indeed.
Yeah, and they'd been there for 50 years and took incredibly good care of it and had this like elaborately manicured and landscaped yard. So I spend a lot of time maintaining the house and the yard.
Awesome.
But then, I have a 15-year-old son, so I'm doing some parenting off and on, but mostly just letting him run free. And then just playing music. And now that I have 3 projects going on, it just seems like I actually can't keep up with the amount of music that is happening. So It's mostly just like going for walks in the woods, trying to keep in touch with people because like now that we're not touring as much, I realize that I'm not running into people constantly like I used to. So yeah, trying to maintain connections and yeah, reading.
Those sound like all good feelings.
Yeah.
You seem like a reader. You read, yeah?
I do. I wish that part of the problem is that I wake up super early and usually am falling asleep pretty early as well.
Sure.
But my wife is a late riser. She probably ideally would get up around 10. And I don't want to turn the light on, but I'm oftentimes awake at like 5 a.m. So what I need to do is this morning I did it actually. Had got my headlamp out and I was reading with the headlamp.
What are you reading right now?
Well, super nerdy book. It's a book called What Language Is and Isn't. It's by a guy called John McWhorter, who he writes for The Atlantic pretty regularly, and he's a linguist, but he also writes a bunch of stuff about race more recently. This book is entirely just about language, but it's very interesting to somebody who super nerds out about language, like I'm studying.
He goes into I imagine, tribal, racial, all the differences in dialects as well.
Yeah, and he kind of talks about how dialects are not really a thing. And this is why What Language Is and Isn't. And talks about like why it is that certain languages are so much simpler than other languages, and it's usually because it was an empire, the language of an empire, because they usually enslave a bunch of people who then have to learn the language quickly as adults, and so the language gets simplified like crazy. And that more isolated, smaller populations, the languages are just like insanely complex. And so English is sort of like in the middle. But it's an interesting, it's a much more interesting and actually funny book than you would imagine.
I'm going to check that out.
Yeah, it's good.
I'm reading a book about Lollapalooza right now.
Okay, they're sort of in the same vein.
Totally the same. I mean, practically the same.
Yeah. The first time that we played South by Southwest, the first person that I saw after we got out of the van was Matthew McConaughey walking up the street with his little entourage. He walked right past us. He's very small.
Oh.
And then the next person whatever random other people, then we got on to, is it 6? What's the main street that all the 6th is in Tacoma?
Congress?
Yeah. Perry Farrell. Because he was Lollapalooza, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was the seed.
Right.
He had there were a lot of smart people around him that turned wrenches and made, there's this one part in the book where he's like, he came into a board meeting. And if you can imagine, I think he's in a lot of various states, mental states, varying degrees of chemical alteration.
Sure.
And he comes in and he's like, I want Lollapalooza to have a giant communal burrito, and you can just come in and eat as much as you want and leave. And they were like,
why?
You're joking,
yeah.
right?
Yeah,
and he's
yeah,
no. And he was really hung up on it. And they were like, there are so many reasons why this is not going to happen.
Yeah.
We won't even research it.
Yeah, including no one would partake. Maybe a few people.
Know.
Maybe some people would.
Yeah, the drunkest people for sure.
Right. That's true.
Would.
That's true. Have you? But
what a health hazard.
Yeah, of course. But if you're into, this is not in the same vein, except for just filled with crazy interesting facts. Have you read The Devil in the White City?
No.
Are you familiar with that book at all?
No.
It's about the first World's Fair in Chicago, turn of the century, which also featured the proof of concept of alternating current for electricity, the first Ferris wheel, first breakfast cereal was introduced there, and the first serial killer, speaking of cereal, was active in and around Chicago, very near to where the World's Fair was happening. That book is incredible. It's filled with shit that you're like, Whoa, shit! That was it. That thing, like so many things that happened at that World's Fair that
I'm gonna be all over that.
it's perfect tour read, but also just good for home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right on. I think I got to know you and got some info out of you
Yeah.
that I feel like we got it.
Great.
But let's talk about the record before we go.
All right, fair enough,
it's pretty important. That's, I mean, I'll talk about it in the intro, and we're here to have some awareness of that, raise awareness. But let's talk about that record.
Let's do it. Do you want me to just go, or do you have a
Why don't
specific
you go?
question?
Go on ahead.
So we decided as part of this discussion that we had about going into sleep mode that we are also going to, because we're not going to be touring, let's not worry about writing a new record right now. But we had bits and pieces, ideas that we'd been throwing around. Plus, Brian had he'd been learning over lockdown how to use home recording software, because he was like a 4-track guy. And then once those went away, he's just like, I don't know how to do this anymore. But because it seemed like the only way that maybe we would be able to write together, he started learning how to do that stuff. And then, like everyone that I know, including myself, as soon as you start learning it, all you do is just write a bunch of like weird stony jams by yourself,
Yeah.
So he had a bunch of those. I have a bunch of those stockpiled from like years and years. And we had, demo idea things from a new record. Mostly that stuff's not on this record, because the idea is that save it for an eventual real record if that's going to happen. But Relapse essentially and our manager reached out and they were like, your 20-year anniversary is coming up, so we know you guys are not touring and you're not going to be putting out a new record, but we should do something. And so I think it was Relapse whose idea it was to do like a, B-sides and like outtakes, because there's always, for every record, you have more songs than are going to fit. So whatever. So there's those things and a bunch of rare little one-off things that maybe didn't even end up. There were just like digital singles or whatever. And so we had enough of that stuff and enough of all these weird demo things that Brian and I had been doing that I was really excited about, but I knew would never make any sense on like a regular Red Fang record. It just seemed like a perfect place to put, a history of all the kinds of influences we had through the covers that we do, plus some of there's like a demo version of Wires, where it's just, when I heard David play the opening riff of that song at his, like, we used to just go over to his house was where we practiced. We'd go into his bedroom and we'd all stand around his computer and do all of the band business. Like, we'd take turns writing emails, on his computer. I'll do the next sentence. But he would like oftentimes play ideas that he had for us, just like sitting there at the desk while we're all gathered. And he played that riff for the opening riff for Wires. And I just like the whole song just kind of just materialized into my brain as soon as I heard that. And I was like,
let's go.
I pretty much just like, not that second, but it felt like I just jumped on my bike and then rode home and then just put the whole thing into the computer with like electronic drums or whatever. Right. So that's on there because that's another glimpse into just some of the songwriting process, the way it sometimes works for us.
Are there any songs that didn't make the like whatever the respective albums that they were sort of in that cycle for, that you like fought for but didn't make it? Because there are always a couple songs where you're like, I really like this one, right?
Yeah. No, there weren't, because I think in almost every case we ended up just putting those out as outtakes.
Got it.
So in some cases there's songs that like we just never even bothered to record, and those aren't on the album because we never recorded them.
There's no document.
Right. It's the fight was always before we even got to the stage of having something recorded.
Right.
Not fight, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But essentially, I said that very poorly, but to encapsulate what I'm trying to say about this record is that it's without just being recycling a bunch of old stuff, because it has a bunch of things that nobody's ever heard before. I feel like it does a pretty good job of taking you through the process, or like a deep dive into what it is that goes into a regular Red Fang record. And it's like broken apart into, here's all the pieces
right
that get used. And if you take all of this stuff and mash it together with the four of us, you're going to end up, with the final regular style, straightforward Red Fang rock record.
That's a little bit of a behind the scenes audio glimpse.
Yeah. And it's hard to really articulate how, but I know it's that. So, right. And you'll hear stuff that it's like, how in the world does that apply to Red Fang? But it does.
Right.
I mean, the thing that I think I probably brought this up at the time when Murder the Mountains came out, but the inspiration for the vocals on that song were Christina Aguilera Hurt, if you know that song at all. I was obsessed with that song for 2 weeks or whatever.
Right.
It doesn't sound like that at all, but it was just that mood that I was in, that space of loving that song for a few weeks and just trying to, that was what informed the vocal melody for that song.
That is hilarious and really interesting. Are there any other popular top 40 type songs that you feel like inspired your performance?
Well, I mean, there's another one on that song, the middle section with the kind of westerny little guitar harmony thing. That was actually from, I always want to call them Hum, but it's that band Muse.
Yeah.
You know that band?
Sure. English fellas.
Yeah. There's some song that they did. I don't remember what it's called. Oh, no, I do know what it's called. It's called Knights of Sidonia.
Okay.
And it was, I guess, based on the guy's dad. The guitar player's dad was in a band in the 60s.
Okay.
And they had a song that he basically used that guitar line. It's kind of like a surfy, westerny kind of thing. The way that I found out about it was kind of funny because it was when the Prehistoric Dog video came out, and I, would look at comments because I was so excited about our first video or whatever.
Sure.
And somebody's, people are like, greatest video ever or whatever. And they're like, actually, Knights of Sidonia is better or whatever. I was like, what is this? Who is this?
The hell you say?
Yeah, exactly. And I watched it and I was like, oh, this is actually a really cool video too. But that little guitar part stuck in my head. And so I kind of borrowed, it doesn't sounds nothing like it. Inspired by. It's the same mood.
Right.
And I don't think that middle section of that song would have happened without me hearing that song. So
Thank you, commenter Jeff 1986 243.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's his fault or credit, whichever way you want to put it. But yeah, those are the two that really stand out for pop songs, and both in one song.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. But Brian, he always talks about, it's not pop songs, but he always talks about wanting to do the Disney vocal thing, which is basically just musicals, where you have two people singing completely different melodies and totally different words, and they do them separately and then they overlap them. And then it's one person talking about, eating too much and the other person, being worried about going gray or whatever it is.
Right.
And
relatable,
right? All the stuff that you see in Disney movies. Bambi's oh man, I really put on a few.
You've seen that Disney movie Balding, right?
right, yeah. So he's inspired by that, but I don't think ever pulled it off. He always wanted to. It's this lifelong goal.
Time.
There's still time.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
You must.
We'll try.
You must. I
Okay.
implore you.
All right. I accept.
Well, I urge folks to go out and celebrate your entire catalog. Always.
Me too. Thanks.
It's all. I really appreciate you coming here, making the trip up here. I totally botched our scheduling because of the Mariners thing.
It worked out better,
You've been
actually.
flexible.
It actually worked out better because my wife was in class, and then on Wednesday I'm actually bringing my son to I'm going to drop him off with his grandparents for the aviation museum. So,
oh, nice.
Scheduling wise, it actually worked better for me.
That's down my neighborhood.
But
as always, it's like awesome to see you.
Yeah, you too.
There's always like you've got something good to say every time I see you.
Yeah.
I like your energy.
Well, hopefully I won't
too hippie.
Hopefully I won't ask you any sort of like bus flipping whatever your version of that is. We're very jet lagged also in our defense.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. I don't think, I mean, it didn't even, clearly you were not thinking that was a thing.
Oh, I knew, but I guess I was
in the moment.
Yeah. In my mind, I was not steering towards that at all. I was steering towards like, how did you guys tour? Did you tour in a van?
Well, it's just as reflective of my perception of what was happening, where I was just like,
you see everything as a impending.
Be cool.
Right. Yeah. I just have always known that I'm not cool, so I'll just go straight into the full awkward mode and just ride it out, Do
you like peanut butter sandwiches?
Yeah.
We eat a lot of peanut butter sandwiches.
Right. Exactly.
Well, I hope you guys get 1.5 billion streams. I wish the best for you and for the band always.
Thank you very much.
And
likewise.
My life is better for having had you here today and for knowing you and the fellas.
Appreciate it. And again, likewise.
Give it to me.
All right. Oh my God. Hot mic.